This is a geometric terrarium, and this is what we're going to be building today. I've had this geometric terrarium sitting up on that shelf right over there. So on today's video, we're going to build this thing out. We're going to create a brand new terrarium. I'm going to put one of my favorite plants that I've had waiting in one of those tubs right over there. It's going to be the centerpiece of this thing. It's going to be a fun time. Now let's dive in and actually get this thing done. Was that a good enough intro? I don't know. I should probably do another intro, shouldn't I? This is an empty shell of a terrarium that I've had sitting on that shelf right over there for pretty much as long as I can remember. It's one of the coolest looking geometric terrariums that I ever bought. I wanted to do something special with this. I wanted to save it for a special plant, which I've got waiting right back there in one of those tubs over there. And today's the date. Inspiration has hit. And that's usually how these sorts of projects come to life. It starts with being inspired. It starts with some inspiration. Eventually it ends up in some inspiration of how we could possibly turn this geometric terrarium into a tiny little world. Well, that's what we're going to be doing on this video, folks. We're going to be turning this tiny little geometric terrarium into a tiny little world. Now, I was a little bit hesitant in using this lava rock in the bottom of this terrarium because I've actually got a whole new secret project going on. A new project that I'm working on for my Etsy shop, consisting of tiny little terrariums. And I'll probably talk about that a little bit further along in this video. But I wanted to make sure that I had enough of my lava rock in this bag to actually, do what I was doing with that new secret project. It's to provide a place for the water to go after it makes its way through the soil, delivers the food to the plant's roots, and then it can finally find its own little home down in the bottom of the drainage layer, which is why we put those rocks down there. What is the next step? Now, the first thing that we probably should have done, because the first thing that I always like to do when I'm building a terrarium, but especially when I'm building a geometric terrarium, is we want to determine what our viewing angle is. We want to find the way that we intend for everybody to kind of observe what we're going to be building in this video here. So I think what we're going to do with this terrarium is we're going to create a moss wall on just the back portion of this thing. So this pane right here, maybe this pane right here, this pane right here on the bottom, this one, and I think our viewing angle is going to be this like front little spot right here. And in fact, with any sort of like design or any sort of art, you're always wanting to find the way that you as the artist want to present whatever you're building to the person. And especially with terrariums, you want to find that optimal angle, that angle that you intend for the person to view it at, so that you can sort of build everything and you can construct everything within that terrarium to kind of appeal to that view. Peeking in just like this is sort of going to be the idea. Let's move on to the next step. We're going to be creating the floor of our terrarium. So we're going to be putting some dirt in that tub right there. But before we actually put that dirt, we don't want that dirt seeping down into our drainage layer. And if we've got the soil kind of, falling down into that drainage layer, it will sort of defeat the purpose. So what I like to do personally, I like to use some of this stuff, which is just some dry and dead Spagna Moss. I'll even give you a nice view. I use this Spagna Moss for all sorts of things. One of the things I use it to amend my terrarium soil. I mix it into my terrarium soil mixes. But another thing that I use this stuff for is just to provide sort of a barrier between the drainage layer and the actual soil that the plants are going to be living inside of this tiny little universe that we're creating. It's sort of like a perfect in-between layer. It blocks the soil from actually falling down into these rocks to keep everything nice and tidy, keep the soil from actually dropping down into that drainage layer that we just put into the bottom of this terrarium. And did you like that slow pause there? And you can use all sorts of things for that. You can use like some sort of a screen material. Sometimes you can buy like window screen. You can cut it to shape and you can put it over top of your drainage layer to prevent the soil from actually dropping down into there. But I like to use this stuff. I like to use this Spagna Moss because it's natural. It adds to the humidity. It'll help sort of soak up some of the water that actually falls from the soil as well. And it just happens to be what I have on hand. So now we've got our drainage layer that you can barely see on the bottom. We've got our little layer of Spagna Moss on top. And now it's time to get our super special soil mixture from up in that tub right there. And when I say super special, well, I mean it's a combination of just a few different ingredients. It's all very simple stuff. What I like to use, I'll go through this real quick because I've talked about it many times on my channel as we've built terrariums and things like that, is I like to use a peat moss. And peat moss is something that you can buy at really any horticulture place. It comes in these big giant bags. It doesn't have any compost or anything like that in it. It's just a nice environment for plant roots. So the majority of my terrarium mix here is peat moss. Then I add in a bunch of this Spagna Moss stuff here. That's going to provide a little bit of sponginess in the terrarium mix. And then what I like to do is I also like to add what's called vermiculite. All these little white little dots in here that you can see, all these little rock-looking things. It's actually what's called vermiculite. And there's one more thing that I've been adding to my terrarium mixes as of recently, just to add a little bit of more drainage. But the best part of this terrarium soil is not just the fact that you can kind of mix your fingers in it. It feels really good going over your palms here. But pumice stone. It's just sort of like a rocky substance. Don't worry, I'm going to wiggle my hands through this one as well, because I don't think I've even mentioned it yet in this terrarium, but the best part about terrarium building is being able to wiggle your hands through all of the different ingredients that you're making. And if you were to feel what I'm feeling right here, you'd feel sort of a very light, like a light sort of rocky type feeling. So the peat moss and the Spagna Moss is going to be for absorbing water in our tiny little universe that we're creating. Well, the little bit of pumice stone that we're going to add to our mixture here, that is going to be for actually creating drainage. It's going to allow that water that we add into the terrarium to, not only find their way to the roots and bring the food and all that stuff that we were talking about earlier, but it's going to just kind of enable that water to find its way down to that drainage layer that we created. We probably won't need too much for this terrarium, maybe a couple little handfuls will do. We'll go with 3 handfuls just so we make sure we have enough. We're going to revisit this again when we create the moss wall. So I'll leave this bucket here for now. But before that, let's grab let's just do maybe 2 handfuls of this stuff. I love to sort of eyeball things. I love to let the ingredients tell me what they want to do. I love to just kind of look at it and say, that looks like about enough. Hold on, Ralph, what do you need? You want to go outside, boy? He's kind of wiggling around out here like he wants to go outside, so let's let him go. This is Ralphie, if you haven't met him before. You want to say hi to everyone, Ralph? Little interruption on our terrarium video. If you've watched any of my videos from the beginning of this channel, where I was kind of like learning my love of plants by hiking around and going on nature trails and stuff like that, I would love to get back into that stuff again. But if you've watched any of those videos, you'll have met my old dog Ralphie. He's getting a little bit old these days. He doesn't really like doing as long of walks anymore. He has a little bit of arthritis and stuff in his joints, but nonetheless, that's old Ralph. We just let him out for a pee. I'm still debating on whether or not I should have started with building the moss wall in the back, but nonetheless, it doesn't matter. We're going to add our terrarium mix, our soil mix, into here. Again, we want a bit of a layer of this. We don't want to make it too thin because this is what our plant's roots are going to be growing in. They're going to be expanding in. And I think I'm going to save a little bit of this. I'm going to save the rest of this. I do want to build some layers. I don't want to get too ahead of myself, but I do want to build some layers with maybe some of that dragon stone right down there. I almost wonder if we should incorporate the dragon stones now. I think we should. So let's head out to the garage. We're going to take this stone. We're going to smash it up, and I'm going to show you something cool along the way to the garage. Maybe a future video. In fact, probably will be a future video because I've sort of been saving it for you. But we built this morning gecko terrarium. Well, we built it on this channel originally. We replanted it on this channel again, even more recently. And look at it now, man, it's just grown in so much. So this thing is actually due for a trimming. This is why I love plants so much. Look at how ambitious that little plant is, just poking up through the screen. What we're doing now is we're cracking a dragon stone. Let's see how many times it takes. See if we can do this in one good hit right in the middle. Nope. All right, we're gonna have to hit it pretty good. All right, there we go. All right, maybe this one more time. In fact, you know what? Break it. Smashed up dragonstone. Again, dragonstone. It's really cool. You can use it in terrariums. You can use it in aquariums. You can use dragonstone in all of the ariums. But first, let me let Ralphie in, because he's barking. There you go, boy. You have a good pee? The other ingredient that we're going to use, this is going to be to create our moss wall. And what I like to use, there's a bunch of different ways you can do this, but I like to use just some regular, just natural, dry, like clay. It's like modeling clay. So I want to pull out a pretty decent chunk of our clay, maybe one more of these. Did I mention that this modeling clay is going to be what provides the stickiness that will actually help our moss adhere to the walls? It'll allow the moss a surface to grow into, but it will allow it to also, stick to the glass. I don't think there's any real more simpler way to say it. I'll prove to you that it works before we move on to our next step, because one of the very first terrariums that we ever created on this channel was this one right here. If I spin this around, you can even see the moss has kind of started to take over, but this is that natural modeling clay mix that we're about to create. And this terrarium it's at least over a year old at this point. We're actually gonna go back and get maybe another handful of our terrarium mix right here. And really the only reason for using another handful of this dirt kind of stuff is just to give it a little bit more of a natural, we want to create sort of like a mud. We don't want to have just a white kind of modeling clay in the back. We want to have like sort of a muddy, foresty looking thing. Now the other thing that we need to use is a little bit of water. Of course, we got to saturate this down. This is my Misty bottle, and this thing, it wasn't too expensive or anything like that, but it's an automatic. It's got like a battery in here, so all I have to do is press this button and it just like automatically sprays. That's not the point though. What we're doing here is we're adding a little bit of water into the mixture, and now we're going to actually get our hands dirty and start to just incorporate this this peat moss into this clay mixture here. This is the funnest part, folks. This is the part where if you thought getting your hands in the dirt earlier was a good time, well, my friend, you've apparently never tried wiggling modeling clay full of peat moss through your squishy little fingers. It's got a pretty satisfying squish to it. Hold on, let me get you a real. Why else would we make terrariums if not to experience these sort of feelings? At some point you got to call it quits, and I'm going to call it quits at this point. We've got our little dough ball, but we're going to get to the exciting part now. We're going to dig into these tubs over here just for a couple things. Number one, we're going to get some moss, because that's what we're going to be building our moss wall with. So I want to use just some of this really awesome looking green moss over here. We're going to pull a nice little handful of this stuff out. One thing I never really considered using, oops, is some of this cork bark right here. Maybe we'll pull some of this stuff out too. Now, one of the main reasons that I started this project was this little plant that's in this tub right down here. I'll put the name on the screen because it's kind of like a weird scientific name. But this has been like my favorite plant for so long, and I've wanted to give it such a special little place, and I don't know, for some reason I feel like this this awesome triangular geometric terrarium was the spot for it. So this is going to be the centerpiece. I just want to point out that this Spagna Moss right here, this is the living version of that dry stuff right over there. It's actually a really fun moss to watch grow. Number one, because it's just so different, but it's so spongy and it gets so long and it's just so satisfying. We'll get this back into place. One other plant that I know that we're going to want is, I always like to have some sort of like a grassy texture. Dragon's tongue is this stuff right here. It's very hardy growing. It's very easy to sort of just like take clippings and like regrow. It loves humidity, so it's perfect for these type of terrariums. And we'll grab some moss over from this terrarium right here. That's another thing that you can do with your projects, is you can always just kind of get in there, especially when the moss is kind of growing real well like that on the side. Just take some out. So here's our big bowl of mosses, and we've got our one plant in here. We've got some of that dragon's tongue in there. We'll probably put a few more plants. I think I'm going to take some clippings from that terrarium right over there, but we'll wait on that for just a second. Let's take one more plant out of here, just while we're at it, and just because I have a bunch of them. Let's take one of these. Let's take one of these little these purple waffle plants. This purple waffle plant is especially lively. For example, if it kind of doesn't have enough humidity, if it doesn't have enough water, it will really shrivel up and it'll look like almost dead. But then as soon as you water it, almost like the day you go back the next day, and it's plumped back up to life. So it's just really very expressive. We're going to start to build our structure is what we're doing. So I'm going to take our biggest chunk of dragonstone right here, and we're just going to start to create like a shelf is the best way that I can describe it. And then keep in mind, this upper level is going to lead to the moss growing all over the back and stuff here. So it's always kind of fun to pull out these little puzzle pieces and kind of fit them into place. Even though the funny part is that after a little while, what happens is like the plants just kind of take over, and all of the work that you've put into the structure and everything of your terrarium, it sort of goes away. Nature sort of takes its course, you know, God sort of does what it's going to do, and it just kind of like does its own thing. But that's the idea, right? That's the idea. We're sort of creating the seed, and then nature is going to take what we created and make it what it truly should be. It's going to make it better. I think the slope is coming together pretty dang good, if you ask me, and you didn't, but I'm telling you anyways. We're going to actually get to the part that we've been waiting on since we started working this blob of clay together. For the most part, basically what we're going to do is we're going to take little blobs of our clay substance that we made, in case you want to see it again. But we're going to start to take just, you know, bigger chunks. And again, we're going to go all over these back walls. So the first thing I'm doing is I'm sealing this little back rock that we placed in here. I want to get that nice and sealed in there. And really right now, what we're trying to do is I'm covering this pane. I may even cover this pane. I haven't quite decided. I think I am going to cover this pane, in fact. Maybe like a 1/4 of an inch. Is that about a 1/4 of an inch? That's about how thick you want it on the glass. You want to have something that you can obviously press your moss and stuff into. But it doesn't need to be this like big bulging thing. Hopefully you're getting a decent little view into there. It is starting to look extra cavey. I've still got this whole area down here, and we're going to cover that pane, we're going to cover that pane. And we're not going to go too much further on this front area right here. It's taking these raw elements, it's taking this mud and slapping it all over the walls, and it's just watching everything kind of come to life through your hands is amazing. Get yourself that feeling, and the best way to do it, in my experience, is to build tiny little worlds. I want to give you a little peek at what we're looking at. We've got a little space in the back there to kind of clean up, but overall we've basically sealed everything up in that back portion. In fact, this is our last little clump right here. Let's use it wisely. Maybe we'll go right up here. Just kind of seal into the top. Now we're going to actually finish everything off by putting moss all over the walls, and that's the whole reason that we did this in the first place. We're going to take little pieces of our moss. Right here I've got some Spagna Moss, and we're just going to start kind of shoving this into random spots right into the mud. We're just going to kind of get this, just shove it right in, literally. I'm going to take this piece of cork bark. We just want to break this up into a little bit of a littler chunk. Coolest thing about cork bark is it's really soft and kind of spongy like that. And we're just going to take little chunks like this, like that, and we'll start pushing them into places just like we did the moss. Do another random little chunk right here. Let's put some of this moss in here. This is actually moss that I locally harvested just because I thought it had such a cool, it has such a vibrant look, and I love the way, I just love the detail of moss, don't you? Like, look at that detail, it's so cool. If I didn't say it before, really the key here is you just press it in. You just take a chunk, rip it off, you find a spot, like that spot right there, is where I'm about to go, and you just kind of give it a little press, give it a little wiggle, and you've got yourself some moss. Let me get you some light in there. What do you think? Is that little cave coming together? Cover the edges. I'm always looking to cover the edges of things like the wood that you broke apart and stuff like that too. You always want to get rid of those like harsh edges. I actually made a video game a little while back. It's on Steam if you play video games. It's called Gooberries. And I remember when I used to make videos of like actually building the game and stuff like that. It's a game about farming and things like that. But when I was building videos about designing that game, I used to always talk about softening the edges, softening all those sharp edges. And it's funny how you like bring things from your past, like that have nothing to do, like building a video game has nothing to do with building terrariums and that sort of stuff. But it's funny how you like learn these lessons in life and you just kind of continue to carry everything with you, you know, softening those edges. It's such an important design aspect. It's just it's what makes everything look more natural. And it's again, what kind of allows you to you know, use your human hands and create things like with structure and stuff like that, but then also just make it look like it was there for forever. I've just recently made Gooberries free to play on Steam, so if you want to go and check that out, you are welcome to do that. It's free, it's fun, I made it, I'm excited about it, or I was excited about it, and I don't really think about it anymore. I do just want to say something with this one because I've got these little tiny ferns that I was talking about sticking out of this. I'm going to stick them right down in that corner. I do want to kind of make sure I don't squish this one too much. It's finally time to incorporate our centerpiece plant. And then before we even incorporate that, we're going to put all these other little plants in there somewhere. So I think I'm going to decide we're going to put this one right up in the front with that. We'll put a piece of our dragon's tongue. Put this plant right here. Another, this is our purple waffle plant again. In fact, let's not take over. Let's put this bigger piece in the back just to kind of balance everything out. Now, balance is another thing that's super important when you're working with terrariums. You always want to balance, you know, like don't put your biggest plant, all your biggest plants right in the front. Spread them out a little bit. So you want to direct the person's eye. So again, we've got our viewing point right here in the front. We're trying to direct the people's eye. So we're going to put our nice big centerpiece plant right in the front there. And that's going to really pull your eye to that front. And then what we want to do in the back is we want to have a little bit going on so that it kind of makes you, the way that I like to think about it is it kind of makes you want to go like, huh, what's back there? What else did I say we've got? We've got our dragon's tongue. The reason that I'm using this dragon's tongue is it's going to add a lot of nice texture. It's going to add these purples to the background, but it's also going to kind of give it that like grassy like appearance back here. And I like that. I just love that. I I love incorporating some like grassy like textures. It just again softens everything up a little bit. Did happen to come up with the name of our creation back here. The name of our new terrarium is the Prismatic Cavern. What do you think about that, folks? The Prismatic Cavern. We were just about to put our centerpiece plant right in the middle here. Now what I want to do is I'm going to put this, because this is our centerpiece, we're obviously going to have it right down here in the foreground. We're trying to give something, we're trying to give the viewer, whoever looks at our terrarium back here, we're trying to give them something to kind of peer in at immediately, something that just catches their eye to entice them to look at all of the details in the background. I'm going to put it a little bit off center, again, just so that we can sort of balance everything out. Balance is one of those big words that we're constantly thinking about. This is another one of those plants that is just very, very expressive. When it's happy, all those leaves are going to be very kind of puffed out and, you know, spread out to the world, soaking up sunlight and things like that. When it's not very happy, it's going to look a little bit more like this, where the leaves are kind of, they're just kind of folded in. This is the whole reason I built this terrarium, was mainly for this plant. I've had this plant in mind for this terrarium for a long time. We're going to put this other little waffle plant right here on the other side just to offset it a little bit. What I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of lift this plant up, and I want some of these leaves to be just kind of resting on top of this rock. Just add a little bit of interest right here in the foreground. I always like to put like some sort of a nice ground cover plant in here. And this terrarium in particular, look at how this, I think this is called like baby Tears POA or something like that. It has just taken over everything. It's just covered absolutely everything in here. So I've been meaning to trim it anyways. It's just such a little micro plant. I love how it looks, and I think it's gonna make an awesome ground cover in this plant. So I might not even need my scissors. Yeah, I probably won't even need my scissors. I'll just pull some little, it's just some pieces out like that. I'm just gonna kind of clean up in here. Don't worry, it'll all come back. And we're gonna take some little chunks. Let's get these final remaining plants into the Prismatic Cavern that I came up with the name for back there. And then I hate to say it, it makes me a little sad, but at that point we're pretty much going to be done. We're going to put it on the shelf. We're going to say goodbye. I'll give you one more big tour, of course. I'll clean it up a little bit before we actually say goodbye. I'll probably pull it out in front of the camera and get a thumbnail, but you create these little seeds that you can barely tell they're there in the first place. This little tiny little tiny cuttings of plants, but before you know it, all of a sudden you really are starting to notice them. It's almost like they start coming out to wave to you. They grow, they take over. I think we're done. We've basically created a seed, and now what this thing is going to do is it's going to come together. In fact, we've got to grab our spray bottle and give this a little spritz. We're going to start to incorporate all this. We're going to let the plants basically do what they do. But that back there, that right there, let's even close the lid. That was the Prismatic Cavern build. We finally came up with the name with it. I think I'm just going to let fate do its thing. I'm going to let these plants start to take everything over. Can I get you in close even more? I don't know. Anyways, that was the Prismatic Cavern build. Let me get you a shot. Well, at this point, there's only one thing left to do, and that's find our new terrarium, our Prismatic Cavern, a new home to live in. And I think it's going to be right on this shelf, right beside the carnivorous capsule. So, if you made it this far in the video, well, you must enjoy something about me. You must enjoy something about the way that I build terrariums. I'm fascinated with plants. This whole channel is about building tiny little worlds, among a few other things, but I love the concept of playing God, of creating tiny little worlds, and I hope that you enjoyed that too. If you did, please subscribe to this channel. I've got more projects coming. I've got some bigger projects waiting in the garage. I've got some more tiny projects, waiting just around the office here. I've even got one little kind of secret coming up. It's not really a secret, but it's just something I've been working on for my Etsy shop. It is a tiny little terrarium that I'm doing some work on. I'm 3D printing this, a lot of the aspects of this thing, and we're going to be incorporating a lot of the different elements that I did on our Prismatic Cavern thing in here, like a moss wall. It's going to come with all of the different stuff that you need to build your own tiny little terrarium, just like we did on this video today. So pay attention to the little things. If I had anything to say at the end of this video, it would be pay attention to the little things. And subscribe to me so that we can see the next project together, so that we can work on the project together. Leave a comment down below, let me know what you think. If you really want to help me, if you've watched all the way to this point in the video, please share this video with other people and tell them that, you know, there's this cool guy that likes to rant on a lot, that's got kind of this spirituality mix along with terrarium building. I don't know. I hope you're as excited about this stuff as I am.